Welcome, Catherine Annis, to another Wisdom Within conversation. So,
Hey, Marian. It's so much fun to be with you again.
in the colder Canada.
Yeah, it is. I went for a walk with my dog this morning, and the sun's shining brightly. It's nippy, it's cold, but I'll tell you, we've had a milder November and December than I ever remember having. So I've been
Oh,
enjoying that.
that's great. We've been starting to have a colder one. So clearly we're getting the Canadian weather our way.
Things are flipped, maybe a little bit, but who knows?
So I was talking to you earlier about how I would love to talk about a really tricky subject. And this one is about OCD,
Mm.
especially, well, any type of OCD, but also about the biggest OCD that I see that has ramped up over the years, which is people who are afraid of dying and afraid of illness. And that could be for themselves, but mostly it's for the people around them. Now,
Mm.
when I sort of thought about that, and we were talking earlier, and you said, oh, this is a big one. This is like, what I love about our conversations is we have no idea what we're going to say and what's going
True.
to arise from that conversation. And I think that's what makes this, well, for me and you, so interesting, is that we don't know that. And if we trust that whatever needs to come up will come up, then that's great. So I personally know, just to start with, that with the hundreds of people that I've worked with OCD and really high anxiety and that sort of stuff going on, that it always arises from a deep-seated place where they just don't know that they are emotionally safe and they don't know how to be that. And so they look to the outside world and they try and control that. And especially with OCD and touching objects and counting numbers and all of that sort of thing, that if I do that, then the outside world is going to be okay. And my job is to point them inside to where their true feeling of safety is and what that really means.
Mm.
So this is a tricky one because anybody listening to this who has that knows that they find it very difficult to keep their attention somewhere other than um, on their worries, their thoughts, their touching, their everything. It is obsessional and they will keep going back there. But I would like to talk to the space that's in between those urges to go and do that.
Mm. Yeah, I love that, Marianne. And I think I'm not an expert on OCD, and I haven't worked with a lot of people, but my sense of it is that it's just a more extreme version of what most of us are doing all of the time. We're somewhere on a continuum of trying to control outer events so that
Yes.
we can feel safe. As human beings, that's basically what our lives can become about,
Yeah.
before we access this sort of inner sense of where our experience is coming from in the world.
Mm.
So not, it's a painful place to be.
Yeah.
Um, and I do know a couple of people who would consider themselves or have been diagnosed as having OCD. So does that feel right to you, that it's a more extreme version of what most of us
Absolutely.
are doing when we're trying to control outside circumstances so that we can feel safe?
Yeah.
And
It's a
I
feeling
think that
thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So if we look at if we can get underneath what's going on. I think you're right. I think that most of us, if we weren't afraid of death, that would change our behaviors dramatically,
Mm.
no matter who we are. So almost everything that we do is to try and prevent illness or prevent death. It's to is to try and keep this body safe.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's Maya Angelou said to Oprah Winfrey, once you're not afraid of death, like, so much just falls away. in terms of living your life more fearlessly and authentically. Um, and just
I
being,
agree with that completely. Because I still
yeah.
have, I don't have a fear of death, but I have a fear of time running out.
Mm,
I'm much, much better than I was, but I still definitely have an echo of that in my system. That, oh my God, I count, oh no, I might only have 10 years or 20 years or, left. And if I didn't have that, then I'd be even more fearless than I am now. So yeah, you're right. That's a beautiful. Maya Angelou is amazing.
yeah. Yeah, and I remember, when I was contemplating this subject, I'm looking at what have I come to see myself around this?
Mm.
What insights have I had that might be helpful to anyone who might be listening? And I can remember having one of my first insights around, death and the temporary nature of our existence here in the physical form. Like, I was a kid. I don't know how old I was. I don't think I was in my teens yet. And I was walking down, I have a memory of walking down the street. And it was, I was just becoming aware of this thing we call death. Like, it's like, wait a minute, people are going to die. People I love are going to die. And I was a child. So I don't think anyone in my immediate um, family or circumstances had died yet. So it was just coming into my awareness. And oddly enough, I remember thinking, or a thought came to me, and it occurred to me, what if death isn't horrible? Because I was pondering as a child, I was thinking, if everyone dies and everything dies, what if death isn't really a terrible thing? Now, I don't know about you, but for me, it was like that thought just came to me. And it opened me up to a place of wonder around, rather than believing what I'd been told about death. So something in me opened up, a curiosity that wasn't based on what I'd been taught and told and what I saw around me, which was death was something to fear and prevent, and we had to sort of live our lives in fear of that eventuality. Um, So where do I want to go with this? So that was an early, but that doesn't mean that I wasn't afraid of life. It just meant there was this sliver of space between me and what I believed about death that left me open to um, being in a state of wonder rather than certainty, as in, it's horrible, I have to avoid it at all costs, and I have to live in fear of it. Somehow that was helpful for a deeper wisdom to show up for me around it. um, I also So I think that's important. I think it's important to question what we think we know about death, first of all.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of my teachers, Byron Katie. I mean, I consider her to be enlightened, whatever. It doesn't matter whether she is or not, but I've learned so much from her. She had an awakening experience. And she said, if people knew what death was, if they really knew, they'd get excited. Okay. Now that sounds really far out, doesn't it? But I did a training with her that was a 9-day training. When you're in the presence of someone who has no fear, that something happens, your own fear loosens up. She was saying something that made me question what I thought I knew about the dying process and about death. So rather than contracting around the idea of death, I started to open up and wonder about it. And that has been everything in terms of my own experience of life. Now, I've lost my father. My dad was 56. I was 27 when my dad died of esophageal cancer. He'd never been sick a day in his life. And boom, he was gone within a year of that diagnosis. I had a dear older sister, Louise. She died at the age of 43. Um, she was 3 years older than me. I was 40, so that's 17 years ago. She died from cancer as well, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which many people survive. But so it so having those experiences, instead of closing me down, really opened me up to question what I thought I knew about death, and to look a little bit deeper into the mystery around it all. Um, and myself, I was in a remote location and suffered a stroke as a ranger in a wilderness park. So, so I really confronted death in that experience. Um, because there was no one to save me. There was nowhere to go. And so I also think that every time we lose a pet or every time we lose someone, our own belief system rises up and we can see more clearly what we're believing about the temporary nature of life. So in some way it serves us. You know, we can inquire into, and we can't know. So what's, you know, all of this has led me to really being in a state of wonder around it. We don't, you know, it's a mystery, and we think we know something about it. Like
So,
we,
so when you've got somebody who is worried about, just say they've got lots of children in their family, and their OCD shows itself in that they're concerned about the fact that somebody, you know, if they've got a cold, well, it must be worse than that. If they've got tummy problems, it's got to be cancer. And all of that is coming from inside someone who doesn't understand where their peace, their letting go, their safety, that they can look after themselves and deal with that. But actually, at the core of that, usually, is because it's not really the children they're worried about, is they're trying to pacify themselves. They're trying to comfort themselves. And I think what you said is beautifully said with the death, is that you found a way to be comfortable and comfort. It's comfortable knowing that. And
well,
when,
you know, yeah, Mary, I
yeah,
realize I'm I'm actually, I have beliefs around death that scare the bejesus out of me. And if I question those beliefs, if I start to question those beliefs, are they really true? Can I really know that? Then something opens up. If we're willing to question our assumptions around this big issue of what we're calling death, then our fears start to dissipate. You know, in my coaching, Marian, as you know, all of my coaching is around dealing with the inner negative narrative, that habitual thinking that contains all of our fear and insecurity, no matter what the subject is. So when we stop giving that inner negative narrative all of the authority in our lives, a deeper wisdom has an opportunity to arise.
mm,
This is, you know,
mm,
this is generally what happens. For it's what happened for myself, and it's generally what happens for other people. I think with OCD we have so much, our thinking is so lightning fast, like it's become unconscious almost. It's like
yes,
it has this momentum,
yes,
right? And we can't calm ourselves enough to even see that we've got any thinking. It's just this activity that
yes,
seems to be in control
yes.
now. Yeah.
And basically what you're saying is that when you don't give authority to that, so somebody who has a propensity for OCD is looking for comfort,
Yeah.
that they can be okay in this world and they're safe. And obviously when we drop our thinking and we're more clear, that we enter that beautiful space of peace and contentment, and we know everything's okay and we know we're going to be okay. So I guess what I'm saying is that when we're talking to people with OCD is how do they see that when they don't believe everything that's going on, that they will find that comfort in a different place? We all want to soothe ourselves sometimes. And my way of soothing is when I know I'm in the flow of life, like now, right now, I know that I am just in that beautiful letting go space where my life seems to be working out great right now. It feels wonderful. I'm soothed by that. I'm loving it. And all of us want to find that place, don't we?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
You
I
know,
would.
things like OCD and other things fall away then.
Yeah, for me, I drank excessively for about a decade. Red wine, give me another bottle. Like, it's like I had relationship after relationship. After my marriage fell apart, I was spiritual seeking, looking for. So I had my version of this going on. It didn't, it may not have taken the form of classic OCD, but there was definitely habitual behaviors and patterns, maybe on a larger scale,
Love it.
perhaps,
Yeah.
someone who has OCD, and it's the micromanaging. So
Correct.
my sense of this is that I had this conditioned thinking that was fearful and insecure that became my identity. And then my behaviors were a reflection of that thinking that I had going on.
Yes. Yes.
So when I started to hear the deeper truth of our experience, that we're not separate and alone, no matter how separate and alone we feel, that we're not in control of the outer circumstances of our life as much as we imagine we can be, and that it's safe to surrender. Why? Because we're not separate and alone, because we are connected to all that is. And I think it's Einstein who said the one question that we each have to answer for ourselves is the universe friendly? Now, most of us grow up with conditioned thinking around the universe is not friendly, life is not friendly. You have to be afraid, you have to be frightened, you have to find a way to manage.
And feel safe.
Okay, yes, okay, so that's our conditioning.
Yeah.
There's a deeper truth about our interconnectedness to all things. There's a deeper truth in that we have a wisdom and an intelligence within that will guide and direct us, that we think ourselves away from
Yeah.
through this conditioning that we have.
Yeah.
That deeper wisdom is always present and available for us. And
Even if we've lost our mind,
yes,
you know,
Mary,
and
yes,
that's the one thing, not the one thing, but that's the true knowing I have, that even when I'm in that bad space or I'm troubled or angry or whatever it is, that it will always come back. It will
yes.
always come back, which I didn't know before. And that
It's
makes me feel, for a recovering person who never felt safe, that
yeah.
that to me now, I'm completely emotionally safe now, because I know that.
So beautiful, Marian. No matter how far we go down the rabbit hole, our true essence, our true nature, our innate health and well-being is the spiritual essence within each one of us. However you want to frame that or articulate that, it doesn't matter. That is always, like, for me, healing is going from this fragmented sense of being a separate person who's got to figure it all out and try to keep yourself safe, to dropping into the deeper wholeness, the the deeper wisdom within. And in any moment that we fall out of that habitual thinking that keeps us on the what's that called, that wheel, the hamster
Hamster
wheel,
wheel.
right?
Yeah.
we can fall out of that. And I think the beautiful thing about having this conversation, Marion, it isn't an intellectual, oh, if I could just get it. It's a deeper spiritual truth that's available for everyone. And when we continue to look in that direction, no matter how many times we go down the rabbit hole, or no matter how many times we get caught up in a mind that's speeding and racing and telling us we have to do, anytime we fall out of that, what we fall into is this deeper place of calm and peacefulness and trust. You see, I have come to trust the larger picture of the way my life is unfolding.
Yeah.
I have come to see that the only thing I needed to be fearful of, well, it isn't even that. It was that my thinking was generating a fearful feeling in me. It had nothing to do with what was going on outside. And as long as I was giving authority to all of that fearful, insecure thinking, I would stay caught up in that apparent reality. You know, it was like it's like a self-fulfilling we mesmerize ourselves by
Yes,
our
we do.
yeah.
Yeah, we do.
And the deeper truth is that we can wake up out of that. And we will always hear a deeper truth will will wake something up in us, even if we then get caught up in our thinking again.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think just knowing that our home base, anyone and we know of people who've had all sorts of diagnoses,
Yeah.
and some of my mentors and teachers have been psychiatrists and psychologists, and they have seen people's lives transform no matter what the diagnosis. You know, we have a special effects system,
Mm.
right? And it's
Yeah.
our thinking is brought to life through our consciousness, and we have a biophysical response to it. Our bodies respond to thought. You know, so we can be watching a horror movie and our body thinks we are
That's
living.
me. That's why I
We are
don't watch them.
so our minds are very powerful. And so once we start to see the truth of this, um, our personal thinking starts to quiet down no matter how busy it's been.
Mm.
And once that happens, and you and I've heard this and I've said it and I've experienced it, it's that our deeper wisdom is like the flute
Yeah.
always playing in the orchestra, but we've been listening to the brass band for
Yeah.
so long that we haven't been able to hear the flute. The flute never stops playing. It's that deeper wisdom that's within everyone. And no matter what your diagnoses, no matter what, how far away you feel from any sort of peace or calm, that peace, calm, and clarity is your true nature.
Yeah.
It is who you are underneath the noise of that personal thinking. So even if you think you have no control, even if you think this is just something that takes you over, there's a deeper wisdom and a deeper truth that will wake up in anyone. And I don't have a magic, I don't know what the magic answer is. It's just, I know that when we hear a deeper truth, something in us perks up, something in us
Yeah.
recognizes it. And for each of us, that's our journey to follow what brings us greater clarity, what brings us a deeper sense of peace. If we will open ourselves up to that possibility, the universe will meet us there. So instead of giving all of our attention to this fearful, insecure conditioning, we open up to things that give us a deeper sense of peace, a deeper clarity, and we keep moving in that direction.
Mm.
And whatever steps we take in that direction will begin to blossom in our outer lives. So, you know, it's like all of those things we do to try and keep safe. You know, those are really things that we did to try and comfort ourselves because we felt disconnected
Yes.
from the deep sense of peace and wisdom that's within. The good news is that's still within us all. And this journey is just about reconnecting with that.
Mm.
And
I,
what gives me hope, Marion, is we all have the wisdom within to take that journey, even when we think we don't.
yeah, I think that you said something earlier. I'm just going to repeat it because I think it was so important. Everything that you said is true. Is when you talk about the hamster wheel, that's us. That's our minds going 100 miles an hour with a poor little hamster, who thinks it's going to go somewhere or get something or find something, and it's going 100 miles an hour. And that we all have the ability, not just the ability, it's natural that we sometimes fall off that and get caught in that beautiful, peaceful, wise, comforting space. It happens naturally. We all have it. We were born with it. We're going to die with it. We've never lost it. We don't really have to uncover it, apart from maybe having some insights that lets you know it's there more often. But if we think back, there have been times that we have experienced that.
Yes. And I want to say too, Marion, there was a huge block of my life where I didn't, like, I heard other people saying that, but when I looked within, it was just dark and numb and like black. I mean, there wasn't, so, but really that was just my conditioning. I was so far away from listening within that, but you see, I had to hear it from outside of me first. Like, I had cut myself off from it
Mm.
through
Yeah,
my own
yeah,
version of this inner negative narrative. So whatever, it was, I learned to trust. I would hear someone say something and I would know that it was true, but I wasn't yet experiencing it. So this is important, I think, for anyone who's really caught up still in any kind of an addiction,
mm,
and OCD is just sort of an obsession with doing rituals that we think are going to keep us safe, and when you hear someone talking about the possibility of freedom from all of those behaviors, something inside of you knows that it's true. And until we have that inner experience of freedom ourselves, we need to just trust and follow whatever it is that brings us greater clarity, greater peace of mind. Um, so that's really about trusting our own path and our own journey in life, and trusting our own inner wisdom to lead us to greater clarity. So whether that's listening to beautiful music, whether that's, we're all going to find our own way out of
yeah,
that self-created um, contraction.
yeah,
And the more connected we feel to the world around us and to other people, the more we become aware of our interconnectedness, the less we have to do to try and keep ourselves safe. We realize that we can trust this larger unfolding because we're not separate and alone. We are a part of and an expression of this beautiful intelligence behind life. And we can trust that. But we have to um, experience that for ourselves before
yeah,
we can let go of all of the habitual behaviors, you know.
yes.
So that's a process, and that's, to me, that's a sacred journey of healing for each one of us.
I
uh,
agree. I agree. That's a really great place to stop as well, because I think we could go on for a while. Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. It is a journey that we all take, and it's a journey that we all take to get that deeper understanding. So, but it doesn't mean, but it's available to all of us, and we can certainly have it and see what brings us that peace, really, isn't it?
yeah, and that piece is within us all. It just gets covered up by
Yeah,
this habitual chronic thinking.
yeah,
And when that starts to quiet down, a deeper wisdom arises. and we can trust that to guide and direct our lives.
Yeah.
So when you fall into that peaceful place yourself, and I don't mean, when you get that freedom, you just want to share it with
Yeah,
others.
you
You
do.
just
Yes.
want to offer that. And if anyone listening just gets a little bit of hope from what they're hearing,
Mm,
I just want to encourage them to sort of fan that flame, like know that freedom is possible,
mm.
and trust your inner wisdom to guide and direct you no matter how small the steps are.
That's why we love having these conversations.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're supporting one another in this journey
Mm.
of moving from fear and insecurity to a greater sense of peace and love and well-being.
Yeah,
Um, and
it's
that's,
beautiful.
that's what it's all about, isn't it?
It is. It is. So I'm just going to say on the recording, sorry about losing the picture, and the actual picture hasn't keeps shifting on the screen, but the recording hopefully should be great. So thank you, Catherine, and
Thanks, Marion.
we will meet up and have see what our next subject is going to be. We'll have to wait and see. Thank you as
Yeah,
always.
lots of love. Take care.